For the fifth week in a row, the music and the timer is not lining up. But, you know, I have faith that one day it's going to happen.
Tradition is important.
I agree. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Love in the Time of Hydra, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. 10th anniversary podcast. On this day, 10 years ago, Tuesday, October 22nd, a lot was happening in the world. The top movie at the box office that day was Gravity again. Royals by Lorde was the #1 song for the third week in a row. Thor: The Dark World had its premiere in London, and the government was on its 6th day back from being shut down. But the most important thing that happened on this day 10 years ago was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s 5th episode, Girl in the Flower Dress, which aired on ABC 8/7 Central. I'm Jamie Jirak, and I'm here with my co-host, boyfriend, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. novice, Tony Paletto. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Jamie. Hi, everybody.
Hi, and I am so excited to introduce our guest today, the host of a little podcast called Phase Zero, Jenna Anderson.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to have an avenue to talk Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is awesome.
I know. I'm so happy you're here. Normally, Jenna, I would ask our guests to tell us about their podcast, but I think we're technically not allowed to do that. But I will say I love that this is the third podcast we've done together this week.
I know. We went for the hat trick. I love it.
Yes, it's beautiful. I'm so happy you're here. So Jenna, we usually kick this off by talking about what we were doing 10 years ago today. Do you know what you were doing? Do you have any idea?
I'm going to make you both feel very old. I was a freshman in college when this was happening.
All right.
So I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I was probably going to classes, just being excited about Marvel, talking about Marvel on Tumblr. So yeah.
Tumblr. I was a few months out of graduating from college, and it took me 5 years to graduate. So, but on this day, Time Hop is not helping me ever since it got rid of Twitter. It's been a bust every week. I know generally I was in a production of Rocky Horror. I was starting my first big girl job, but this exact day, I don't know. But I bet Tony knows what he was doing.
I do. Yeah. So I was at this point, let's see, 10 years ago. I was in a laboratory developing a new kind of AstroTurf that was premier for sporting leagues and events, sort of ideal buoyancy, and it took tread really well. We were in the testing phase of that 10 years ago today.
Wow.
I can't tell if you're doing a bit or if this is honest.
Jenna, unfortunately, it's a bit, and it's a bit that I have to deal with now every week.
Because I was meant to be like, wow, I've learned so much new Tony lore since the last time I saw him. This is amazing.
They are calling it the Tony lore. It's like the Tony lore fan fiction of each week. Oh, God.
I've lived an adventurous life, and I'm sorry if it's blowing your mind.
Oh my gosh.
Who knew? I lived with the man. I had no idea he had such an interesting time together. All right, guys, I gotta say, first of all, thank you to everyone who's been listening and posting about Lido. I want to shout out at AOSBR on Instagram for helping to grow our Portuguese audience. That was really cool. Thank you. And then last week, our chat took a poll. And it was whether or not we tell Tony something. And it was almost unanimous. Only one person said we shouldn't tell him. But they've decided, Tony, that you need to know that Aquila from last week, who you loved so much, is never showing up again.
Yeah, I figured that was it. And I kind of figured that was it because I heard the rumblings of being like, we're talking, the fans and I are talking, we're taking a poll about something, whether or not to tell you. And I was like, I don't think Aquila's coming back, man, because I was so stoked on her. And also in the time you and I watched Buffy and Angel, there would be times where I'd be like, invisible teenage assassins, and you're like, they don't come back. And I'm like, oh,
I know. So, I won't always tell you, because then you'll know for sure when people do come back, and we don't want to make that obvious. But this one, it's like that. It's why I don't like that episode, because it sets up a really cool character.
It does, however, it sets up a cool character, but it takes away the thing that makes her so cool, which is this neuroocular implant. And she's cool without it, but that was really the thing,
Well, sorry to break that news to you, but hi to everybody in the chat.
Yeah. Hey, everybody in the chat. This is a friendly reminder. Tag your spoilers, please. That just means writing spoiler alert before discussing anything that happens on the show after episode 5. So today we have a guest producer in for Maria, and this is Brooke. And if y'all think that you can just get away with spoilerings because Maria's not here, well, you're wrong, because there's a lady named Brooke, and she is listening, and she is the spoiler police. So behave yourself.
Yeah. Be nice to your substitute teacher.
Yeah.
Hashtag protect Tony. I
No
actually
pranks.
added something to the rundown. Normally we do not cover news on this podcast. This is not a news podcast, but maybe it's just the Jenna of it all. It inspired me. We do have a little bit of news to share, and it's that in 2 days, Marvel Studios, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, an official timeline is coming out, and there are already grumblings that it's going to confirm that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not in the sacred timeline. I know.
I'm so sorry on your behalf. The only thing I've seen about those rumblings, because it's my weekend and I try not to be on Twitter, is I did see a screenshot of, I guess, something Kevin Feige wrote where he's like, after this point, who knows what's going to be canon? And I'm like, oh, the fandom's going to have so much fun with that. But I'm so sorry if this breaks your heart and like decanonizes it.
It really doesn't. But here's my thing. I've talked about this a million times without giving any spoilers. There's no way to justify the way season 5 ends being in the sacred timeline. It literally can't be. It doesn't make sense. But I am sad to know that none of it is, because it just means that like Coulson really is dead. But we have our own Coulson, and multiverses exist, and that's fine. To me, I don't really care either way. I'm just happy to know. But next week we will know for sure, because the book will actually be out. So that is that bit of news. Moving on. I want to talk, Jenna, a little bit about, because I don't actually know your history with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, I know you've seen some of it, right? But not all of it.
So I did start watching from the beginning because I was very much into the early days of the MCU. Like I said, I was on Tumblr, so it was like any morsel of MCU content. It was like, let me latch onto this. So I watched it pretty religiously during my freshman year of college. I tried to keep up with it as much as humanly possible in the years after that. The last bit that I can remember watching is the first arc of season 4. I will say that. Like from that point onward, I know rumblings of what happens. I know certain things here and there. I have been meaning to go back, and like I will say, rewatching this episode made me like really want to go back and like appreciate this show more. But so it's like I know I like, because part of it was also I got really into the Arrowverse shows, and then I started covering them for my job, and they literally had one show like every night for an entire week, and so S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of fell through the cracks here and there. But what I did watch, I did thoroughly enjoy.
Oh, I respect it. And you know, if you stopped at the halfway through season 4, the second half of season 4 is the best arc of the series. It's my favorite part of the series. Yeah. So like if you did want to jump back in, you're in the right spot. But I also am pro rewatching everything.
There's so much in this episode that I did not remember, because I did not watch 1 through 4. I just watched 5 as its own thing. And so it was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. This is where we started. And so it's like I almost do want to like go back and completely start from the beginning, because I like there's so many little details I had forgotten about.
And if you do that, we can have you on more.
Exactly.
So
yes, that was my thing. Yeah.
And Jenna, I mean, the people know. People know you. They know that you are a comics expert. I think I feel very comfortable calling you an expert.
Thank you.
Jenna's the person I go to. It's either Jenna or my friend Brett, who was our second guest on here. If I have a comics question, it's one of them I'm going to. So tell me about like, do you have any good S.H.I.E.L.D. comics recommendations? Any that you remember really liking?
S.H.I.E.L.D. is one of those concepts that I feel like isn't really comic. I don't know, like they just exist in the comics. There's not really like a huge touchstone of like, oh, this particular run of this particular thing. I've liked the ways that they've been used over the years, and it's really just more certain characters within them. Like there's one character, Jamie, that you know that I already asked to be back on for another episode tied to that character because I really like them. So I think it's just the characters that come out of S.H.I.E.L.D. is what I like the most out of it.
Cool. All right.
Cool.
And then okay, so let's do it. Girl in the Flower Dress. Let's talk about it. So first of all, Girl in the Flower Dress was written by Brent Fletcher, who was a producer on the show from episode 2 through the end. He wrote 15 episodes, including Love in the Time of Hydra, the episode we named our podcast after. And one of my top 5 favorite episodes, which doesn't happen until the final season. So he is hardcore around the whole time. And then it was directed by Jesse Bachko, who directed 13 episodes, including Love in the Time of Hydra. And many of my favorites, also the episode that I have a tattoo of. Jesse directed, so that's pretty cool. So this episode sees the return of our core 6 actors and a lot of guest stars. We got Louis Ozawa as Chan Ho Yin, aka Scorch. Shannon Lucio is back as Dr. Debbie. Austin Nichols as Maya Linden. Ty Ma as Agent Kwan. And best for last, Oscar-nominated actor Ruth Negga as Raina, aka the titular girl in the flower dress. I'm not going to do a big recap. Here's just a slight recap. In this episode, a man with pyro abilities gets kidnapped by a mysterious woman who is revealed to be working for Centipede. During their attempt to rescue him, S.H.I.E.L.D. learns one of their own has betrayed them. Tony, since this was your first, thank you. Since this was your first time watching it, Tony, what were your initial thoughts?
It's okay. It's not one of my favorites so far. I think my biggest thing was what's the name of the character? Well, Scorch, the character that Louis Ozawa plays, is like a bit. His plight is a bit wonky because I was just like, "What's this guy's deal?" He's like, "I don't want to be a superhero. I just want people to see how dope I am." And I'm like, "All right, so you're a bad guy, right?" Like I feel like I was supposed to get on his team at a certain point and never was able to do that. But it was so wild watching the very first scene where he's doing street magic. And I'm like, I fucking know that guy. Who is that guy? That face. And then I looked it up later. He's in Predators, the 2010. Oh, I didn't even do this on purpose. I'm wearing a Predator shirt. Holy shit. This is amazing. For those of you who are only listening, I'm wearing my Predator t-shirt as I'm talking about Predator. Perfect. Anyway, he's in there and he gets into like a straight up samurai sword fight with the Predator in like a field. And it's actually maybe the most badass scene in the movie. So I recognize him, and then Ruth Negga shows up and I'm like, I know. And I was like, I recognize everybody in this scene. And Jamie goes, "Baby, that's Ruth Negga." I was like, it's like that's Academy Award winning or nominated Ruth Negga. I was like, oh, of course it is. And so that was really exciting. She's beautiful and really cool and kind of creepy in this. And then Ty Ma is in like everything. He's in Arrival and he's in Rush Hour. Like that's a dude that I've just been seeing so much over the years. I'm like always excited to see him in any capacity. So my favorite thing about this episode was the wealth of actors that I like that were exciting.
Fair. Jenna, what were your thoughts rewatching this? Do you remember watching it the first time at all?
I remember the Ruth Negga of it all because, again, at the height of Tumblr, it was like, oh my God, Ruth Negga. So I will also add to the guest star conversation because as Tony started talking, I thought he was going to say a thing and he did not. Also,
I know.
In that initial scene, because I had to Google it because I was like, is this really the person that I think it is? And Jimmy O Yang of Silicon Valley and Crazy Rich Asians is one of the people that is watching him perform magic. And I was like,
I recognize that guy too. Yeah.
Because I thought when you were like, I recognize everyone in this scene, I was like, Jimmy O Yang is going to come up.
I
knew that's what was happening too. I knew that's what Jenna was going to say.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't what Tony was going to say.
It made me so happy that he showed up. I honestly, like, I totally echo what Tony said, but having not rewatched 1 through 4 and not having a frame of reference, I will say just like dipping into this episode and being reminded of what S.H.I.E.L.D. was and what the like tone and the pacing of the show was made me really nostalgic because it was like, wow, I've missed the days when superhero television kind of took this sort of form and was able to get this weird and get this ambitious and not always stick the landing, but have a lot of fun in the process. Like I said, as someone who has watched way too many hours of like the CW Arrowverse shows, they were not even on this kind of level. So this just made me it made me so nostalgic for like the height of like phase 2 MCU era when this show had so much to offer.
We do talk a lot about just network television and how, but you know that we've talked about that too.
Yeah.
So I really like this episode, and part of it is just I love Raina. I love the energy she brings. I love that flirting is her weapon, and she's so good at it. She's just so beautiful. And I also actually, Tony, what you're saying, what you don't like about Scorch, I actually do like. I like that it's unclear because I think that's a major point of S.H.I.E.L.D. in this episode. You question S.H.I.E.L.D.'s motives. There's a lot about this episode where you're like, are S.H.I.E.L.D. doing the right thing? And we'll talk about that more in our like kind of deeper rundown. But that's why this episode worked for me. Also, when you do have a character like Raina, it's that I love so much. It is fun to, I have a connection. So it's different when you're rewatching it than a first time for sure.
Yeah. definitely.
So diving in, the first thing we got to talk about. So we start in Hong Kong. We meet this street magician who has fire powers, insane. And so we got to talk about Scorch. Now, Scorch is a comics character, but not with the name Chen Ho Yin. It's a different. I looked it up. There's a bunch of different iterations. Before I just spew out these lists of people, Jenna, Scorch is not in a lot of comics.
No, that is very much like an obscure mantle. Like I'm literally looking it up right now because like I'm even kind of rusty on just like the lore of Scorch. But yeah, it is just very much this type of character that like, do you need a name for a pyrokinetic? Like you're probably going to go with Scorch.
Mm-hmm. I will say so. So the first Scorch was Tommy Ing, who was introduced in Thrasher number 13 in 94. He had 6 appearances. Ross Jones debuted in Black Wolf number 2 in 94, 3 appearances. Then Scorch the Mutant debuted in Bishop the Last X-Man number 1. He made 14 appearances. So okay. I feel like he's the definitive Scorch. But still, yeah, like Jenna said, it's like with the third episode where they would just flip through comics and just went close their eyes and kind of picked a name is I think what happened in this one. Tony, did you recognize this name from comics at all?
No, I don't know. I mean, I've read a lot of comics. I'm not as well read as Jenna, but I definitely did not know who Scorch was. But it did seem like somebody like pulled out of obscurity. You could feel that coming off of it.
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge Saprilla in the comments who says sad news, did not catch a monkey mention this week. We no monkey this week. We're still on 2. The monkey count for fifths is only 2, but that's okay. We've got a lot more time to hear monkey references. So all right. He's displaying his fire powers in the street. A mysterious girl in a flowered dress flirts her way into his house and basically just gets him straight up kidnapped.
Well, that's one of the funniest parts. I mean, I really laughed when she was like, "Close your eyes," and then she's like, "That'll do," and he opens his eyes. It's like 3 dudes in hazmat suits. Those fucking suits are noisy. Like those guys. I just like imagining those guys like tiptoeing in really carefully, so as not to spook Scorch. That was a great start for me.
And so Tony, like Ruth, like you've seen Loving, which she was nominated for. Yeah. She should have been nominated for Passing as well, even though I didn't love that movie. Her performance was insane. It was so good. Did you have like an initial feeling of this character?
Oh, she's beautiful. I mean, she's just so striking looking. I was like, gosh, Ruth Negga is gorgeous. She has I like that they brought back Centipede and the Extremis, and it was cool to see that the Doctor character from episode 1, right? That's her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was cool to see their relationship. She's interested. Raina, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's interesting because she's seems like she's just holding on to that last thread of compassion, but she's mostly just weaponizing her guiles and doing all this twisted stuff to people. So she's creepy. She's spooky. She's very capable and seductive. I would probably submit myself to experimentation if she wanted me to.
Me too. 100%.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, we're all on the same
across
page.
The board. Yeah.
I think that's a poll. Who would submit themselves to experimentation at Ruth Negga's hand?
All right, Jenna, all this Raina introduction for you, coming back to it, what were your thoughts here?
I echo what Tony said. I think it's a very good, almost like kind of like network TV version of film noir kind of thing, of like when you literally name the episode after her, it's just this kind of thing of like she's like a temptress, you don't know what to expect from her. And I liked the arc that we went on across the episode with her of just like Tony said, kind of using her sexuality and her like place in this world for like to kind of manipulate people and lead them down a path that isn't accurate at all. I think she's the perfect kind of person to fit into that sort of role, but it also at the time was such an unexpected choice that it's just like amazing that she's even on the show.
I love the film noir comparison because you're totally right. She's just
even
classic
girl in a flower dress is sounds like a film noir.
Yeah. Ooh, I love it. So all right, so this happens, and then this is a big episode for Skye. We've got a lot of Skye to talk about. Skye's finally fitting in. She's playing Battleship with Ward, and then this was really funny because as soon as she goes and meets up with this Rising Tide guy, I wrote "uh-oh" in my notes, and then Tony goes out loud, "uh-oh."
They started smooching, and I said, "Uh-oh," right as Jamie was writing it.
So she has this little boyfriend who's a member of the Rising Time, and he helps Centipede find Scorch for money. Not nice. So first, I just want to say before we really get into this, I love how she gets caught because May is behind the door holding her shirt. So Jenna, I'll take this one to you. Do you think May was like listening to them have sex? Do you think she was in the room?
I think she gave them a little privacy. I don't know. I also just love how horny this episode is. Like, just between that, and I know you have it in the notes, but like I loved your little bit about Phil and Melinda, and just like, oh, do people really ship them? And like this episode did lay that down pretty thickly, and it is kind of great. I don't know, because even just like Sky's boyfriend, the way that he's talking about like we can run away together, be in a fancy hotel room, it was just like, oh, this is just so nice. It's like gonna go so badly, but it's so nice to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like May is, it's not like she's like has her ear against the door. I feel like she's sitting as far back as she can with a magazine.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was a fun 8 minutes. Let's move on.
Oh boy, 8 minutes. Poor guy. All right, cool. Yeah, I thought that was really funny, but like it's also just Sky is getting on my nerves a little bit, which she's been known to do. Like I'm not even talking about betrayal or being duplicitous, because all of those reasons and motives have substance to them. It's that, of course you were followed. Like, the fuck are you thinking? Like, it's this surprise to see Melinda May on the other side of that door, and I'm like, and it's she just keeps thinking she's ahead of the curve, and it's so obvious she isn't, and so I'm annoyed with her surprise.
That's fair, and I am glad though that all of Sky's shit is already laid out. Like, I just we knew from the beginning that she was in contact with somebody, and it was just, let's get this out of the way, because secrets are annoying, and there are so many good layers. Like, Ward is clearly jealous. I love that Fitz's feelings are hurt, but then Gemma's sympathetic because Gemma gets it. She's a girl too.
Yeah.
So Tony, having, you know, you're in your Sky back and forth. Are you glad that it's we're going to talk about the scene with Coulson later, because but just for now, what were you thinking? Were you surprised it happened so quick that she got caught?
No. Like, of course she got caught. Like, it just seems so obvious to me. Like, it's S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, you slipping out the back door on S.H.I.E.L.D.? No, you're not. They know where you are. Like, especially you've already been established as a suspect. And Ward pissed me off again, because he's, you know, the one thing I'm holding on to Ward, like the thing that like is like makes him worthwhile as a character, is he's very capable and good at his job. And then he's tailing a dude and just straight up looks at him like, I'm tailing your ass. And he's like, oh, I've been made. I'm like, yeah, you've been made, you moron. Like, what are you doing? Anyway, this isn't about Agent Ward. It's never about Agent Ward. But yeah, I'm not like flipping on Sky. She just, I'm back and forth on her. Mm-hmm.
Jenna, were you, because I find that a lot of people did not like Sky from the beginning. It took me a while to grow on Sky as well. Do you remember your feelings about her from the beginning?
I definitely, it did take a couple of episodes, I remember, to like really warm up to her, but I think it is this thing of like her ostensibly being the audience proxy helps a lot, especially at that time in the show. Sure. I do agree about the whole thing of like, she should have known that she was going to be made, but I do think that it is nice this far, 5 episodes into the show, to already reveal those kinds of secrets and kind of like get the ball rolling in that regard. Like, just genuinely asking, not having rewatched, how much time has passed like that she's been with S.H.I.E.L.D.? Because like, should she have suspected that they would have tailed her and like suspected that she would get made that quickly, or has she been with them for like 2 weeks?
My guess is at this point it's probably been like real time almost, like what, 5 month, 2 months. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Feels right.
Yeah. All right. So Jenna brought it up, and this was next to my notes because Tony learned about the Felinda shippers last week. And based on last week's episode, I literally said, I was like, there is nothing romantic about them. But then this episode, May was like, we could go a few rounds on the mat like the old days.
Yep.
And then
I picked up on that.
And then later they have like a little flirty. I mean, it wasn't really flirty, but Coulson's talking about, you know, Loki's staff going through his heart, and she jokes through the brain. And I'm like, I don't know. I think that's borderline flirting, but especially the Matt thing. That was like the first 4 episodes. I don't see it, but this episode I did raise an eyebrow.
I mean, I can imagine it, you know.
I lost my mind at that moment because I forgot that dialogue completely and like that whole kind of part of their dynamic. But like, as somebody who like reads a lot of Green Arrow and Black Canary comics, like using like Taekwondo and martial arts as like a metaphor for that happens very often. And so the second that that line came out, I was like, yes, this is amazing. We are so back. Like I love a show like this where you can have those two characters and you've only really known them together for 5 episodes, but you can kind of see like the nuggets of that chemistry.
Yeah. It is funny that me, like last episode, you know, you, me, and we all poo-pooed that idea. And then this one, I'm like, oh no, they've had sex with each other. That has happened. Ooh. It's been a minute, but that happened.
Oh, I love that. Has it? I don't know. I really don't.
I think probably like 7 or 8 years ago, they totally did. Yeah.
I would honestly go further. I would say like 15.
Wow.
Like day one academy at a party, you're just it's like when you're adding everybody, like Facebook wouldn't have existed then, but you're adding everybody you meet on Facebook, and then like the next day you're like, oh fuck, I don't know any of these people, and now we're Facebook friends for the rest of our lives.
I'm sorry, I don't think Jenna can keep up. See, she was in freshman year of college just about 10 years ago, so we're talking a little over her head.
Jenna,
oh god,
this is a great question for you. Did you ever use Flickr?
Oh, I forgot about that name. Oh god. I remember it being a thing. I don't know if I used it. I just remember it existing. I don't know. I had a Facebook in middle school, like early high school. So I was well on Facebook at that point, and definitely had the thing where I graduated high school and I'm like, why am I friends with all these people still? I don't care about them. So
I keep it just to have birthdays. And sometimes I'm like, I don't remember who half these people are.
Me too.
I'm at a college party and I don't one time. But last week's episode referenced Flickr, and we thought that was hilarious.
I love the Minecraft reference in this episode. Like obviously Minecraft is still a thing, obviously, to this day, but just like in this time, it's like, oh, that was such a like microcosm of just being a gamer and being like a specific kind of like guy gamer. It was like, that was just a nice little thing.
And it's cute that Fitzsimmons knows knows about, like they know the deets. Super cute. Okay.
He got scared when he said demon pig. It was really funny.
We meet Agent Kwan, and this is where we learn about the index. And this is kind of what I was saying earlier. The index to me doesn't sound like a good thing, like registering people with powers.
Well, they reference this thing called the power protocols, which sounds very much like something that would lead into Sokovia Accords. And I was like, power protocols, that could be pretty shady. I feel like there's a lot of clauses in there that are pretty much an invasion of privacy and behavior and stuff. So
yeah, Jenna, were you feeling like S.H.I.E.L.D. was being shady in this episode?
Oh, absolutely. Like, can we spoil the movies? Like, can I reference something from the movies?
Yeah, movies are fine.
Because like there's the scene in Winter Soldier where they get the one guy on the roof and he says like, we've been tailing all these people. That's where we like name drop Stephen Strange for the first time in the universe. That it gave me those vibes of like just keeping an eye on all of these people. And like Tony said, it's totally this precursor to what we eventually got to in Civil War. So I was like, oh wow, we were seeding that so much earlier than I had expected.
In this show.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pose this question. I'm going to pose it to you first, Jenna. So when Raina is trying to sell the name Scorch, she goes, ever heard of Steve Rogers? No, but Captain America is on the news. Okay, I'm sorry. First of all, the Battle of New York just happened, and I feel like everyone knows Steve Rogers' names. Even if it didn't happen, I feel like he was really famous in the 40s to the point where you would know the name Steve Rogers. I need to know if you had a reaction to this, Jenna.
I definitely can see that angle of it. I did not think about that at all. I do think that like that whole speech was such an interesting like time capsule of where the MCU was in its early days and like how they viewed superheroism as like this novelty still. So I loved it purely for that because it was like, wow, we've strayed so far away from that with where we are at now in the MCU. But like now that you mention it, it's like they would have known Steve Rogers. They would have known Captain America.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I do like that point because it is a time capsule where like it'd be so silly to hear somebody say that now, so maybe that's why it stood out to me. Yeah. But I do think that that after the Battle of New York, you would know all those people's names.
I also, because like when Tony was talking about like, oh, Scorch just wants to be like well known, he wants to like people to think his magic is cool. It's like that feels like so reflective of just how celebrity culture and internet culture was at that time. And so it's like I like how we intersected that with being a superhero of like it's the equivalent of just going viral on like Vine or whatever. It's like the version of that is just being a superhero with a name and everything.
Yeah.
Tony, did you clock that at all?
The Steve Rogers business?
Did that bother you?
Yeah, I thought it was weird. I was like, okay, well, I mean, he lives in Taiwan, so maybe, but no, like I feel Captain America, yeah, that's what people call him, but he's always called himself Steve Rogers, you know, like, so I feel like it's pretty well known. I feel like everybody knows who Steve Rogers is. They could have done better on that one.
Yeah. Steve Rogers.
I'm Steve Rogers.
We are going to take a quick 1 minute break. So if you are watching and you need to run to the restroom or fill up your drink, Brooke, send us away for a quick 1 minute. It's going to happen. And we are back. Thank you all for taking that break with us. We are here with an amazing guest, Jenna Anderson. We are talking about Girl in the Flower Dress, the 5th episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So let's keep on moving along. In the episode, we eventually find out that Raina is working with Centipede. So the doctor from episode 1 comes back. Extremis is mentioned by name. I can't remember if they actually name dropped Extremis in the first episode, but they do. Okay. We know that there's something in Scorch's blood that is making this work. I really love that they tie this back in with episode 1.
See it. Yeah, I was happy to see Centipede back so quickly because, I mean, I think I commented in, I don't remember if it was episode 3 or 4 that I was just really digging how much foundational work that the show is doing so early on. They're setting up a lot of stuff. And so glad to see that one's paying off as quickly as it is. Pretty interesting organization that now, I mean, the only face of it is Ruth Nega and this one guy in prison, and then mention of somebody else I'm sure we'll talk about soon.
Jenna, I'm not going to ask you what you predict because you already know what's going on here. But did you remember Centipede?
No, honestly, like completely memory hold that entire thing. So it was like, oh yeah, this is kind of the stakes of this season. And it made me kind of excited to, like I said, rewatch more of the season and kind of dive into it a little bit more. Because I think week to week, I wasn't really retaining all of it. I do think it's funny, just like now being where we are at now in the MCU and rewatching this in the year 2023 and just seeing how many attempts at the super soldier program there were when you really break it down. It's like, this is just yet another one that adds to, you know, Isaiah Bradley and Red Guardian and all of these other ones. It's like, wow, we really were trying to make that happen and it didn't work.
Stop trying to make it happen.
One crazy thing about this episode is so many people die and brutally. Agent Kwan gets his whole stomach blown out with a fireball. It's really dark. And then, you know, Scorch doesn't make it in the end. They have to sacrifice him because he went too far. The doctor burns up. It is everyone's burning up. And it's getting dark. Raina had those doors closed and she was like, bye bitch, I'm done.
That was ruthless. That was amazing.
Jenna, did you remember things being kind of so brutal?
No, but I will say, because I'm also like, I've been watching Smallville for the first time over the past like couple of years, and so I'm like towards the end of season 8, and just like that show on itself is like very violent as well. Like there is a lot of death and a lot of like crazy deaths in that show, and so like watching this concurrently in the span of a couple days was like, wow, yeah, there is just like, we used to really go there, and now it's like in superhero TV, it's like every death is a fake out or like doesn't matter or gets retconned.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there was a body count in this episode, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Tony, were you surprised with that, but also like disappointed? Because I feel like you were excited by some of these people, and then like, oh no,
yeah,
a ball of ash.
Yeah, Ty Ma, I would have liked to have seen around. He's a cool dude, and like, yeah, it's not. He's the Hong Kong Coulson, so that's really cool. But yeah, so I was kind of bummed to see him go. But I'm also was kind of glad to see Scorch bite the dust. I don't need that guy to keep knocking around. I mean, maybe it would be cool if you've got like a loose cannon villain out there, but like his whole like I need attention plight was like really annoying to me. So I was like, yeah, you should probably be blown up. That makes sense.
I don't know, Tony. We live in LA. Like we know, like we're used to that kind of energy.
Yeah, there's a few people who could be burnt up in this city. Yeah.
Salty Shield Stan dropping some trivia that she was originally going to be killed off in episode 1, but I like that they saved it, because I like when you bring a character back and then they die, because like even though it's like this bitch doctor who you're supposed to hate because she's screwed with my boy J. August Richards, like it's still like anybody can go, you know, and I like that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's cool. So Sky. You know, we're talking about liking Sky, and I will say this final scene with Coulson is a first big moment for me where I really love Sky and feel for Sky. Watching it for the 10th, 11th time, I teared up watching this scene. I really think it's you know, first of all, on her way to the office, Warden May giving her the brush off is so brutal, like rude, like, but she deserves it. And it's just like, and then Coulson goes full dad mode, and Sky finally admits that she's looking into herself. It all comes down to, she wants to know who she is. And it came to a redacted Shield file, which is one, very interesting, very curious to see what that's about. But also just like the emotions of that scene where she really thinks she's going to be kicked off, and Coulson wants to help her, and he just gives her a bracelet and is like, you're restrained, but we're not kicking you out of here. So Tony, thoughts on the scene? Thoughts on how Coulson handled it?
Yeah, I mean, Coulson's my favorite. Like he's always going to the brink for people. You know, he keeps, you know, for being he's that element in this show that shows you Sky cannot be completely right about this being an evil black hat, you know, organization. He is such a compassionate dude. I just like how many times he's willing to take a risk because he believes in the better nature of somebody. He's done it like in almost every episode so far, and I really like him for that. And I thought that Sky's scene was really, really lovely. It was a powerful scene. And, you know, I'm just thinking back to when we had Jake on for episode 2, and him being like, there's more to this girl. I want to know more about Sky. I want to know about her history. I'm like, I hope Jake's still watching because it's popping off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenna, thoughts on this scene?
I love the narrative device of just like, oh, my parents, and looking for my parents and looking into my own history, and just having that tie directly into Shield, and having it be this thing where it's like she didn't ask for these circumstances, but she's kind of just exploring them, and then it's backfiring on her up until this point. I think that like, I'm seeing people in the chat say like that is kind of the moment that crystallized that they really liked her in the show, and I'm glad that they put that this early on in the show. But yeah, and like Tony said, like it's such a good showcase of just both of those characters and of Coulson as a character. Like it's just such a good scene.
Yeah, I do want to say, not everybody though. Some are saying it took them longer, and that's good. But the point is, you come around eventually. I know I have one friend who loves the show. We met through the fandom, and when she heard that Tony like didn't like Sky, I was like, it's episode 1. You have had a lot of time with this woman. Like, you know, give the man some time to change his mind. Like I watched him do this for all of Buffy and Angel. He's gonna change his mind on people, and that's awesome. That's the point of this. Okay, so end credit scene. My favorite thing about the show is that they are leaning into the MCU and they always have an end credit scene. And so Raina goes to talk to this creepy dude who's in a jail. She says that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been a problem and mentions someone called the Clairvoyant. Could this be our big bad? I don't know.
You don't, huh?
Yeah, I sure don't. Jenna, without obviously giving it away, do you know who the Clairvoyant is?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I did have to Google it while rewatching this episode because it has been some time since I had heard that name. But as soon as I Googled it, I was like, oh yes. So yeah.
Tony, do you have any thoughts on this scene? What it means? Who is this man in jail?
I recognize that actor too. I meant to look him up, but I could. It's funny. What was like 1 episode ago? They were like, clairvoyance doesn't exist or whatever. They were in reference to my girl Akila, who we'll never see again. They were like, how does she able to do this? Is it clairvoyance? And Fitzsimmons were like, no, that's not real. And we were outraged by that because what's real in this world at this point? I mean, who knows? So it is cool that we've got a name drop like that. My interest is piqued. I want to know more. I mean, this centipede thing's going pretty deep. So I'm curious.
We love sprinkles of a big bad. That's the classic thing of a network show. And I'm not saying it even is, but it sure sounds like it could be.
Who knows is the thing.
No one in this show, that's for sure.
Nope.
We're right and blind. All right, so I'm gonna drop some interesting history about this episode on you guys. So first of all, this episode was originally supposed to take place or start in Japan, and Scorch was going to be Japanese. But LA's little Tokyo didn't work. They like scoped it out, and it didn't work for the filming. So they changed it to Hong Kong and filmed it in LA's Chinatown. But Louis Ozawa, he's American, but his parents are Japanese and Taiwanese. He was cast partly because he speaks Japanese, but they changed it to Hong Kong, so he had to relearn all the lines in Cantonese phonetically. Like, I hope he got a little extra money for that. But I do want you all to know, if you don't know, that Ming-Na Wen speaks both Cantonese and Mandarin fluently. So I like that they let her. They're like, yeah, she's a spy and she can do this. Let's have her, speak the language. So I think that's really interesting that they were like, well, it's just gonna be China now.
Yeah, it's like that Red Dawn thing.
Yeah, the whole thing about having to like relearn another language is just reminding me of like in the Crank movies. I think it was in the second one where they just had the actors who were playing like the generic like Yakuza mobsters speak whatever language they were fluent in, regardless of whether or not it was the same language. And then they just subtitled it under the same thing. It was a stylistic choice and it fits like the gonzo nature of the movie, but it just like adds this extra bit of lore that is like, this is just so wild.
That's funny. That's like Sacha Baron Cohen speaking Hebrew in Borat. Where it's like, yeah, they don't know because they're Americans and they're stupid.
Yeah, got them.
That's exactly. And then a magician, Gregory Wilson, was brought in to help Ozawa with the hand movements, which I love. Go for it. Do it to the T. Do it right. I hope a magician was watching this episode and was like, wow, I'm really feeling it. Take me to the magic castle. That guy
took 2 weeks of lessons. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that noticed. So the episode was filmed from August 30th to September 11th, less than 2 weeks. It will never not blow my mind how quickly they make these episodes. And then so the fire effects are really cool, and I'm just gonna like read you a tidbit because. And it's so special effects supervisor Daria Miko lit a boulder attached to a zip line on fire to simulate the fireballs, which allowed VFX supervisor Mark Kolpak to composite the content together and enhance it further with additional digital fire simulations. And I think the fire looks really good.
It does.
That is a really cool detail of like how they made that. I never would have guessed.
I really like that. Yeah.
Right? The boulder, the zip line.
One day we're gonna get, it could be what is it supposed to be, Jamie? 2025, a Fantastic Four movie. I'm really feeling good about our boy Human Torch, and like him at the very least is gonna look rad if that fire can look so rad in 2013.
Yeah, on network TV.
Yeah, exactly.
I was waiting for one of you to say, I think you're just here for the zip line.
I know, I was resisting the urge to say that.
If it was going to come from someone, it'd be one of you two. But I had to still say
it's always the thing with, I think you should leave references of like, if I just say this and someone does, like neither person gets it, I'm going to sound crazy. So it's like, I will just like keep it to myself.
It's a cult.
Thank you.
It's a total cult. The I think you should leave cult. And I'm a member. Like,
absolutely.
I'm a casual passerby. Where it's like,
Yeah, you
it's
are.
on, I'm watching.
You
it.
dabble.
You go in like Christmas and Easter, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So this is where we ask some questions for Tony. And the first is, where would you rank this episode, Tony?
Oh boy, I should really start putting some thought into that. Maybe second to last or last. I guess, close to I think the first episode and this episode are my lowest rated among the first 5.
Mm-hmm. And did your opinions on anybody change this time around? I feel like
I thought
that, but
yeah, Skies gets on my nerves, but I really did think that it was a lovely moment, and I have empathy for her. I hope she and I'm glad Coulson's going to help her. Ward's Ward and Fitzsimmons are adorable. Like, yeah, no major changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are adorable. My goodness. Okay, anything else you want to say before we kick you out and Jen and I can talk girl time?
There is actually one thing I want to say. There's an amazing scene in there where they're extracting the blood, his blood cells, Scorch. They're taking his cells out, and so now when he does the fire thing, it like literally harms him. It burns his skin, and I had a little inside myself laugh about that because it reminded me so much of a season 1 episode of Venture Brothers, where the Team Venture goes to like a knockoff Fantastic Four like crew, and like the Human Torch is the Human Torch, but the problem is that like every time he catches on fire, it hurts like hell. So like they keep him in like a little locked thing, and then like they like, oh, what's this? And they open it, and he's like, oh god, son of a bitch! Like just like on fire and in extreme pain. When I was like, that is a hilarious take on the Human Torch, and that's pretty much what our boy Scorch was going through at that time, and it made me laugh.
That's good. One of my favorite lines in like all of Marvel history is in the first X-Men when she asks if it hurts, and he says every time when his claws come out. Like, because I think about it every he's in 15 fucking movies, and every time his claws come out, I go, oh, he's hurting.
See, but I love that line because I also juxtapose it in my brain with there's a gif from X-Men the animated series where he gets out his claws to slice a loaf of bread, and so it's like, does it hurt every time? It's like, yes, it hurts in the most innocuous instances of him using his claws too. It just makes it so great.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, I love that. All right, let's say some Tony goodbyes. First of all, Tony, you want to give some thank yous?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you to Stephanie at Eclectic Muses on socials for doing our awesome artwork, and thank you Ryan Miera for doing our music. You can find him at Yellow Pills Music on Insta. And thank you to our stand-in producer. Maria is gone, but we will see her back next week. So thank you. And thank you to Jenna for being an awesome guest. And I hope you keep the episodes rolling and you can come back on with us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. And I will announce that next week we have our next guest, BJ Colangelo, writer and editor of Slash Film and host of This Ends at Prom. And for those of you who are leaving the room with Tony, don't forget to follow us on social media at LitoPod on Instagram and Twitter. From there, you can check out our link tree where it will take you anywhere you want to go. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Leave us those 5-star reviews. Leave us questions. We'd love to answer them. Jenna, where can the people find you on social media?
At Hey, it's Jenna Lynn on social media.
Perfect. Beautiful. Love it. And there you can find out all about Jenna's podcast that she does. I hear it's a really good podcast.
I know. I had to resist myself from doing the outro that I do every single week on the other podcast.
All right, Tony. We'll see you later.
Okay.
Brooke,
bye, guys.
Tony out now.
Thanks for watching and listening, everybody.
All right. Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
All right.
Is there ever a time where you worry that he's like still backstage and can hear you?
Well, so a couple weeks ago, he accidentally, like, his headphones were still in, and, like, and then he took them out, and then the computer noise, so he was, like, plugging his ears, because he doesn't want spoilers.
Yeah, okay.
So he's, like, but he usually goes out and he smokes, and then by the time we're done, I holler, and I'm just like, Tony, come back! and then he comes in and he says goodbye to our guest. That's that's the behind the scenes a drama. So I'm gonna keep spoilers past, not beyond what you've seen, because I don't.
So I will say I do know some details. Like I know Fleet. I know Sky's endgame. I'm still gonna call her Sky because it is kind of like we had talked about that before of like trying to not flub that. It is easy at this point in the show to still refer to her as Sky. Yeah. But yeah, I know her endgame. I know bits and pieces of what happens after when I stopped watching. I just don't know like the broad strokes of where it ends up.
Her endgame is one of my favorite things that happens. And Tony and I, eventually we're going to like start a Patreon and we will watch Agent Carter because he has to see Agent Carter, but you know, eventually. Yeah. So a couple things I wrote down that were spoileries, just in general. Fitz is so cute and dopey, and it just blows my mind the journey he goes on. He has one of my favorite character arcs, and you haven't really gotten to the meat of that. Like, it's really the second half of season 4 where Fitz
I will say the way that Tony feels about Sky is how I felt about Fitz for the longest time. And I say that like I don't know. It's just that thing of like the neurotic, like dorky guy character can always be kind of hit or miss for me, like across these shows. And so it was this thing like there were moments where I really enjoyed him and moments where I didn't. But I have heard that his art gets significantly better. I even felt that way of like how your journey goes with Gemma, because like that episode that she gets where it's just her solo episode, it still lives rent free in my brain. Like that is just an incredible piece of television. So like just seeing all of them be babies and know where they're going to end up is just crazy.
Yeah, that episode, I believe, was directed by Jesse Bacco, who I hate saying names. I box him every time. Who directed this? But everyone in the comments are like, "Fitz is my favorite. Fitz is the GOAT."
I totally understand why. It was just like for some reason it was a personal preference. Like when I was watching the show at the time.
This is a safe space. We're allowed to. Fitz was my favorite character until season 5, and then Deke came around, and I said, "Sorry, Fitz, you're not my favorite character anymore. It's this guy." So I think one thing I want to mention is Miles, this boyfriend. This is the only time we see him. And somebody in the comments, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name earlier, but mentioned that was Chloe Bennett's real life boyfriend at the time. Interesting. That, I mean, we could get into Chloe Bennett's romantic history, but we won't. But I feel like this guy really lays the groundwork for Lincoln, and that is not a compliment. I've said it before. I do not like Lincoln. I think he's very obnoxious, and season 3 is my least favorite season, and it's not because of him, but he doesn't help.
From what I vaguely remember of that and that romance, like I don't disagree.
Yeah, it's like she has a type, and until she doesn't. And it just, if only she could have dated a few girls in there, it would have been so much
my
better.
God. Yes.
I know. We just wanted. Okay. So you know that Bill Paxton is showing up.
Yes. That's what I mean. Like when I said, like, I had to Google him, it's like, as soon as I saw that headshot, I'm like, oh yes, this is where we're headed. And even just like knowing, like I said, of just watching everyone be babies in this episode and knowing where they're headed, even knowing now the Ward twist is so interesting of like, it shapes every single time he is on screen for me. And like now knowing, like I said, the clairvoyant and Bill and everything, it's just like, yes, this is awesome. Like the fact that they could pull this off at the time.
Yes. And Tony, I'm so glad that happens like soon, or at least within the next 6 months of our lives, that like, because I don't know if I could like go years with not talking about Ward. So but also like there's no bigger actor on this show than Bill Paxton. Like there's nobody bigger than that, and Tony's gonna lose his mind.
I was gonna say, like, the fact that he has no idea is amazing.
There has been a point in our history where I've told him, but he's definitely forgotten. He's going to be shocked. Like because there used to be a thing where it's like, oh, you know where that actor's from? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And he's like, oh, but like he forgets. And this week, I cannot remember what we were watching, but somebody came on the screen and I almost went, oh, they're Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But I realized, no, I can't do that anymore. I had to stop myself. And now I can't even remember what it was. So that's probably for the best. An interesting thing is that originally the final scene was actually Raina supposed to be meeting Ian Quinn. I don't know if you remember Ian. He's kind of like the douchey rich guy who he's introduced in the 3rd episode, I think. But they decided that they didn't want it to reveal too soon that he was a part of Centipede. So, but like, and it's funny that you're not remembering him, because when Brett was on, he talked about how, because Ian is only in the 1st season, and then he shows up in like a little end scene in season 5 as a cameo, and we're talking about how like by the time we get to season 5 we're not going to remember who that is. But he's with Raina, so then you're like, Raina, hell yeah.
I love that aspect of network TV and like network superhero TV so much, of just like the long game and being able to play that again with like Smallville and the Arrowverse and everything. Just that when you get to have those moments like that of like this character suddenly matters again, like 5-6 years later, it's just always so cool.
Yeah. Well, and that's why like Gravitron, like Tony thinks he's going to be the same guy that like played him in episode like 3, but that actor's never going to come back. But then like I don't want to, you haven't really gotten there, but like the concept will come back, but like it's not the same. So it's like, I'm just like biding my time, and in 5 years he'll get that payoff. And like, that's amazing. But it's also like, okay, I just have to sit here and be quiet. It's hard to be quiet.
I am in awe of the fact that you are doing this in real time, because it's like I would not have the patience at all. Because like I said, even like Chris, my fiance, showing me Smallville, it's like there have been things he has had to bite his tongue to not tell me, and it's like because he remembers it's a thing that I'm going to watch in an episode, that because we're binge watching it, and I'll watch it like 3 weeks from now. And it's like if he had to wait that long, he would go crazy. So I commend you for doing it this way.
If we didn't do Buffy and Angel as like a little starter, then it would be like that was even, it was the same thing. We binged it, so it only took a year and a half to watch all of it, but it helped us both in terms of how to prepare for this podcast. But yeah, it can be difficult. But Jenna, any other thoughts about this? Anything at all?
Like I said, this made me so nostalgic for just the way that Marvel was at that point in time, and like how we almost took it for granted to a certain extent. And it just kind of made me realize, like, and I know you bang this drum until the cows come home, of just like how much we took S.H.I.E.L.D. for granted as a concept and as a show, and like what they were able to pull off, what they were able to do. Even like I said, I don't know the specifics of the later seasons, but I know some things here and there. Like the fact that they were able to be this kind of show and feature this much and dive into this much weird Marvel lore is still just insane to me.
Yes. I love hearing that. I'm so glad you came on. I hope that you keep watching and get past where you did before, so you can come. I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. It was really awesome. I think Jenna helped grow our chat a little this week, so that was cool. I do want to say we haven't been that diligent. We really did go substitute teacher this week, but a lot of you are mentioning Tony's gone, whatever. But a lot of you are mentioning characters that haven't shown up yet. In the future, just make sure when you talk anything about any names or people, just write spoiler alert ahead of it, just in case, because we want it to be a safe space in the chat for people, not just Tony. We want newcomers to come as well. But right now we're in the Tony Leaves the Room segment, so it's kind of a fair game anyway. So thank you again to Jenna. Thank you so much, Brooke, for standing in for Maria. We really appreciate it. Tune in next Sunday, October 29th, for the 6th episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. FZZT, which might be my favorite episode of the season. If not, it's one of my favorite. It's so good. I'm so excited. If you've been on the fence, but you're still like trugging along with us, I swear next week's episode is the one. It is so freaking good. So join us live on YouTube and Twitch once again at 5 p.m. PT. And if you cannot make the live stream, the episode will be up shortly on all major podcast platforms. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Hey, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans, Jamie Girac here. Thank you so much for listening to Love in the Time of Hydra. I just wanted to come on and correct myself. I said that episode 6 would be coming on October 29th. That is wrong. It's actually November 5th, because that is the 10th anniversary of when FZZT aired. We can't wait to see you. We'll be on November 5th with BJ Colangelo.